What's your favorite book you've read, and why? The Phantom Tollbooth. It was fun to read as a kid, and then I picked it up again as I got older, and noticed so many little details that kept it fun and interesting. Contact by Carl Sagan. About a radio astronomer named Delhi Arroway who discovers extraterrestrial life. There was a movie too which is also good, but different enough that I think the book is worth reading. I feel like I still read a lot, but I don't have obsessive favorite books like I did when I was younger that I read and reread a million times and underline favorite passages. But Contact came across at just the right stage of formative years for me and showed me the kind of astronomer I wanted to be. And I'm now a radio astronomer who specializes in transient radio signals that turn on and off over time. No aliens yet though. Circe and the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm a fan of any Greek myth interpretation or retelling, but the way that Miller portrays and gets inside the heads of characters that have existed for thousands of years is incredibly unique and powerful. These books do not have to be read together as they just share a world, but would highly recommend both, though just a side character in both. Odysseus might be my favorite. East of Eden. I learned a lot about people and why they are motivated to do the crazy things they do. I also learned that there are people who are just straight up rotten. Can't be fixed. I think it's chapter 3 where he describes Kate as a monster, comparing that some people are missing an arm or a leg. Kate is missing something in her mind, which makes her evil. Kitchen Confidential. It's just so honest. The way he reflects about his career, while dropping in little bits of knowledge of how the culinary world works. Flowers for All German. That book was a roller coaster of emotions at the end. Jurassic Park is the only novel I've sat down with and consumed within 24 hours. I love the movie, but the book is so much more detailed, and the characters so much deeper, and in some cases totally different. Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Fabulous sci-fi imagination, filled with characters, worlds, technology, politics, and innocence which invoked the most vivid movie reel of a story in my mind each time I read it, and the others in the trilogy. Update. Quati Z. Blew up more than I expected. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Edited a word. The Book Thief. It's equally heartbreaking as it is wondrous in showing the strong bonds we can make with one another. Catch-22 because I love satire, and no other book I've read captures the absurdity of things quite like Hella did. The Picture of Dorian Gray. I just love Oscar Wilde's writing style and the book has such a deep meaning. It is one of these books you can get lost in. And I had fever when I read it, so that probably added to the getting lost in it effect. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin really shows how much possibilities there can be in sci-fi genre. It's not always just spaceships and lasers. It talks about a completely separate alien culture, where the concept of genders do not exist, and the different societal norms that come with it. It goes into some more stuff too. The premise of the story is very intriguing, and it's very well written. Hatchet by Gary Paulson. I love the story of survival and perseverance. I have read this book many times in my life, and have referenced it throughout my lifetime. I'm now a social worker, and I work in a psychiatric hospital, and when I do my groups I will ask an icebreaker, and have the patients tell me their favorite book. After that I'll give them this book, tell them what it's about, and use it as an example, to continue on in life, to push through adversity and never quit. The Hobbit. I remember my dad reading it to me when I was really little, before they got divorced, so when I read it on my own I remembered some parts from then. Plus, it's a great story that I loved. Slaughterhouse-Five. It reads like silk poetry. So it goes. The Count of Monte Cristo. A fantastic tale of revenge, and if it's worth it. Around the World in 80 Days. Jules Verne has always been my favorite since I was a little kid. Doesn't matter how many times I read it. Always amuses me like no other book. The combination of 19th century popular knowledge and the science fiction of that period shows how far we've come since then, but also how similar our targets are. Where the red fern grows, rips your heart into pieces. The Ingenious Gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha _ by Miguel de Cervantes. Absolutely fabulous novel that is a greatly entertaining read. It's hilarious, relatable, and enthralling. It shows that we are connected to each other across centuries. Written in the early 1600s. But it still holds up. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I first read it when I was 16 for a CFE class elective, and it blew my mind. It is such an interesting read and it really challenges your perception of society and humanity. Watership Down by Richard Adams. For sentimental reasons. The Name of the Wind. I was jobless for a while. Super depressed. And close to homeless. That book played a huge part in getting me through all of that. I still reread it from time to time. The Outsiders by S. E. Hinton. Likeable characters. Very strong story, and doesn't pull any punches. Best book I had to read in school by far. Velveteen Rabbit. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. It's fantastically written. Full of suspension and I just love the overall theme. It is insanely fascinating how he could write about things without knowing they will actually exist after his time. He definitely deserves the title of sci-fi pioneer. Animal Farm. 1. It was a satire 2. I knew what it was mocking 3. It was actually a good story. The Giver by Lois Lowry. I know it's 5th grade reading material, but it was really my gateway to how books can transport you to a different world. I know they made a movie about it, which doesn't do the book justice, as it often is. But damn, I really love that book. My second choice would be The Wind Up Bird Chronicles by Haruki Murakami. Or anything from Haruki in general. Just fantastic novels. The Martian. Hard. Reality-based. Science fiction with a smartass protagonist and a desperate struggle for survival. Watney displays constant problem solving that shows real resilience of character, punctuated with moments of stupidity like anyone would have, and humor that anyone would need to live through a disaster. Edit. Thank you for the gold. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Just a nice satirical book that takes the piss at every turn and looks into the mind and motivations. Where else can we learn the secret to flying? Is to throw yourself at the ground and miss. 1984 by George Orwell. Not to sound like that person who's woke AF. But it really is a book that gets you thinking. It's both fascinating and frightening. Ender's Game. I was 16 and a typical jock. Not a reader at all. My chemistry teacher told me to read it. Blew my mind. Yeah, Rhino Card is an extremely questionable human being. My 16 years old self isn't changed by what the guy's now. The Third Akin Grinch. It's about a miserable bastard who, in the depths of his mania, at the pivotal moment, stares into the abyss and says no, turning away to the path of righteousness for more. It's an essential piece of modern literature, and will go down into the histories. Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. Duck. I don't even know how to explain it. This is some real stuff that'll make you hurt in places you never knew you could hurt. If you're a sucker for a sad/melancholic, but real and honest novel, this is what you need. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Thud. By Terry Pratchett. Really all of the Discworld books. Particularly the City Watch series. And Yesterday, the 25th of May. Being a particularly important day for all the Night Watch fans. But for me, Thud. Particularly the crescendo of the action and the last act of the book, it hit me in a way that's hard to describe. I was crying from laughter, frustration, nervousness, and release. It was a truly great book. The Ranger's Apprentice. Siege of Messendor. Stephen King's The Stand. It's big and intimidating, but the story is so good, and written so well I found myself wanting to savor it. The story and world changed throughout the book. I'm excited to leave it a few more years, so I can read it again without knowing quite what is going to happen. Edit to say. Going to stick the recommendations, based on this, to my to-read list. Cheers for them. I came to voice an opinion, and have come away with a lot more. Call of the Wild by Jack London. I love the whole transition and journey of the dog. Also because it's for a change not about people. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. The first time I read it, I thought it was the best post-apocalyptic book I'd ever read. The second time I read it, I realized it was the best love story I'd ever read. The third time I read it is when I knew it was the best book I'd ever read. All the light we cannot see. It was beautifully written, and I could not put it down. Not a book but a trilogy. Is Dark Materials. Really emotionally packed, and drove me to tears at the end. Silmarillion. Slowest page turner ever. The Old Man and the Sea. It's an easy read with some really important themes such as resiliency, pride, friendship, empathy, etc. It's beautifully simple and incredibly deep at the same time. Favorite book is House of Leaves simply because of the unique way it presents its story. Favorite story is To Kill a Mockingbird because it's a timeless tale that is easy to read and understand. American Gods from Neil Gaiman. I read the book years ago. Awesome. Because it has lots of surprises. And it contains the biggest and the best stories of the world. Mythologies. Because the mythologies are not made up by one man. They are product of thousands of people. It takes the book to a different level. My main language is Turkish, and I'm improving my English to read it in its main language. I think then I can fully have the joy the book can give me. Animal Farm by George Orwell. From a very young age, it highlighted social inequity. Something that has stuck with me my entire life. It's such a simple but powerful read, and is probably the book that got me into reading. I try and read it at least once a year. And Tasting Beer by Randy Mosher. The best entry-level beer education book going around. Lord of the Flies. It's just so sad and shows what happens with an unstable economy. Top Piggy. Probably anything in the Percy Jackson series. It was the first series I read completely through. Fahrenheit 451. Highly recommend. The Harry Potter series will always hold a special place in my heart. It may sound lame, and while they are not really literary masterpieces, they had such an impact on me growing up.